This episode of the Beer Bound Podcast is brought to you by Rolling Hops Beer Tours.
Hey everybody, Garrett here from Rolling Hops, as always joined with my partner,
Andy.
We're here to tell you guys about our virtual craft beer tour offering. With what's going on in the world, unfortunately, we haven't been able to run our historical craft walking beer tour, so we've pivoted to taking the virtual experience of craft beer directly to you guys. Wonderful for team building events, corporate events, even just a night out or in, for that matter, with your friends and family. And we're doing this online.
Have any questions about the beer tours or want us to tailor make an event for you? Just shoot us an email or send us a message on any form of social media. Rolling Hops, you can find us everywhere.
RollingHopsBeerTours.com is where you can get a hold of us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Cheers.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Beer Bound Podcast. We're excited to be joined by Sean Duke, manager of Abe Erb Brewing Company. Unlike most breweries in the province of Ontario, Abe Erb has more than one home, with brewpubs in Uptown Waterloo, downtown Kitchener, and Ayr Village. This dynamic brewing company has a focus in offering a small craft selection of premium ales and lagers, along with quality eats and atmosphere. Their mantra goes, every batch is custom, every beer must be clean and fresh, every beer must be perfect. We're looking forward to learning more about Abe Erb. So without further ado, we welcome Sean to the Beer Bound Podcast. Hello, Sean.
Hey, gentlemen, how's it going? Thanks for having me. I will do my best to answer whatever inquiries you have, I guess.
Fair enough. That's awesome. All we ask. So Sean, maybe you can start us off just telling us a little bit about yourself, your connection to beer, and Abe Erb as well.
Yeah, myself, just, I guess, probably 20 years now in the hospitality industry, and just lately, I guess, kind of get more focused on the beer side of things. Obviously, always liked to drink beer, but kind of got more focused in the last maybe 5-6 years into the craft segment of things. So being lucky enough to work in a couple of breweries in the area, I worked at Red Circle, which is now Stock Garrett, and then now Abe Erb. So it's been pretty cool to work alongside, not brewing myself, but around the brewers and learning a whole lot more about the process, which is something I'm taking an interest in. I don't know if I'll ever end up brewing, but I've been taking the Prud'homme classes and trying to learn as I go along. Yeah, that's me, I guess. Yeah. So now, I guess at Abe, I'm just kind of in charge of guest taps and kind of curating our retail shop, as we are now allowed to do the new Ontario liquor laws.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Abe Erb is interesting. Garrett and I were speaking before we got things started. You have 3 locations.
Yes.
So are you sort of manning one of them? Are you sort of in touch with all 3? How does that work?
Currently just in touch with 2 in terms of the retail. I'm hoping to kind of run all 3. That we kind of keep them on the same page, kind of thing, which is super. I mean, we brought it up when we were reopening after the lockdown. It was super interesting to me. It's a great idea. Like, I was excited just to come out and reach out to all sorts of different breweries and kind of make those connections, and get to be able to try all sorts of beers for myself. Kind of the selfish side of things to get to
Tedious research, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Reach out to breweries I might have gotten the chance to visit or order from personally. So that's pretty exciting for me.
Right. Can you give us a little bit of the history of Abe Erb? Like, how did it come to be 3 different establishments? Which one came first?
Yeah, so we started in Waterloo. It was a couple of brothers. I think there's some other investors as well, but 2 brothers had worked for the Cora's franchise and sold that off. Took their money and opened up Abe Erb Waterloo. And then quickly after that, I believe Kitchener opened as well. So about 7 years ago now. And then a couple of years after that, Ayr opened. And then there was a Guelph location, that never, I guess, really opened, which is no longer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was probably I think they jumped the gun on that one a little bit. Probably was involved in a little bit of the, I guess they did go close down officially. Last, I think it was October, November. Then we got some new owners in to bring us back to life and start things fresh and hopefully carry on properly, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, this and then there, I guess the Waterloo location, it's I guess they're kind of rooted in the history of Waterloo. More so like our flagship beer, the 1857, as our Kolsch Lager Ale. 1857, the year Waterloo was founded. Abraham Erb was the founder of Waterloo. So and they like is in the decor, like we have old Seagram's barrels from the old distillery. We have there's actually our bar has like it's wood, but it has like a char on the edge, which is from an old barn that burned down. So they refurbished that wood and turned it into a really nice bar top. And we have like old map of Waterloo on the wall. So it's kind of a little of a ode to the history, I guess, of the area.
That's really cool. Obviously, Garrett and I were history fans. Me, perhaps a little bit more. But so did you? Maybe I missed that. But did you say what year Abe Erb Waterloo, the inaugural?
7 years. I'm pretty sure it's at least 7 years ago. Yeah.
7 years.
2014.
Okay, so the name itself derives from the quote founder of the town.
Yes. He was a Pennsylvania Dutchman who came up here and set up shop.
That's right. Well, Garrett and I we're quite aware of the strong Dutch, but prominently the strong German community in Kitchener, I guess Waterloo as well.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, does that the heritage of the Kitchener Waterloo area, does that tell us a little bit about the German influence? Does that affect your brewery at all?
A little bit. I mean, our flagship is a German style beer.
Yeah.
And we definitely, I won't say fully, but there's definitely coming in and out, like especially when we were able to do like rotational beers, that there's definitely I think we kind of lean towards a little bit of those more styles. It's hard these days to kind of, I mean, can't really just focus on German style beers. I don't know how well that would sell necessarily. I mean, I would love it. But
yeah, it could be a neat thing. Nobody does that
but
outside of Germany.
Get some, yeah. I mean, I like it was Oktoberfest comes around and I was trying to, bring in a Dunkel and, a half and try and get those German beers going as much as possible. You definitely get to see the people come out. And I think that they had a keg tapping this year at the brewery with the city and the mayor and all sorts of stuff like that. So, I mean, it is the second largest Oktoberfest in the world outside of so.
I've heard that.
Yeah. And Garrett and I have never been.
No, not yet.
No, not yet. They've been canceled the last couple of years. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Got a couple things on that bucket list that just keep adding up. It's definitely one of them. I mean,
I've made it to one so far. It's fun. I'm probably maybe a little too old to do the all night drinking in the beer hall, but it's definitely a must do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for those listeners who don't know, Kitchener and Waterloo, they're sort of Canada's premier twin cities. Sort of just these two medium-sized cities smacked together. So can you tell us a little bit about, so you have your three breweries, they're all kind of in similar locations.
Yes.
Like you didn't open up a brewery far north in Ontario or in another province, for example. Is it an idea to keep sort of central to the Kitchener Waterloo area? That's sort of your base, your foundation,
I think so.
Or is having three breweries just to start?
Yeah, I think that's probably it. It'll be just the three. I mean, I wasn't around when they planned this out, but I think to keep it central to this area, and they are close together. I mean, Ayr's a little farther, but they still are very distinct areas. I think like Uptown is near the college and universities. You get a little bit of an older crowd as well mixed in there. And then downtown Kitchener has like the tech hub, Google building right down the street, a little more business offices going around there. And then Ayr is very, I guess, a rural setting, more so, I guess, up and coming more area. There's really not much else other than Abe Erb out there, so which is good for them. But yeah, like close, but still fairly distinct kind of, I guess, clientele and areas.
Sure. And actually, when I saw Ayr, I was like, oh, no way, there's another brewery. Because I think the only reason why I know where Ayr is because of Willibald.
Willibald,
Willibald Farms out. Yeah, it's like, oh look, there's another one.
Yeah.
That's gonna. I've actually been meaning to take a trip up there just as like a nice weekend little getaway.
Willibald is a really nice spot out in the farm. It is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's a beautiful spot. They got a nice, really nice building, distillery, and now the beer as well. So
yeah, for sure.
They make some really good stuff as well. So
can you tell us, Sean, a little bit more about the beer that Abe Erb produces? So I suspect that the styles and the variety are the same throughout 3 breweries. Is that fair to say? Or does each brewery?
Yes. I mean, currently, because we are technically a brand new company, we're waiting on our excise license to actually brew on premises. So we've been contract brewing for the last few months in Block 3, actually on St. Jacobs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We like Block 3. Yeah.
So, so right now we're just kind of like, we're running five styles. And then hopefully, which I believe is soon, our license is coming back into effect. So we can do more small batches. And then in that case, it'll be Ayr and Waterloo brewing whatever they kind of feel like, usually is how it worked in the past. Just nothing crazy. They could like stick to classic styles. I know there's a stout coming, I think in the next month or so, perfect for the season. I mean, season. People are coming in and asking about beers we've brewed in the past. So I'm hoping that we can get back up and running and kind of bring back some of those fan favorites and maybe try some new things, of course, and kind of so like it'll be exciting to like actually come into work and smell the malt brewing. So I kind of miss that every morning.
I love that. I love going in from time. Obviously, we if you didn't know, we spend some time at breweries every so often. But yeah, I love catching a brew when you're going on the brew day and you smell everything that's just been brewed and mashed and all that. It's definitely a wonderful smell. I did want to bring sort of touch upon what you mentioned earlier on. You said you kind of curate guest taps, and I guess because like you said, you're not brewing in house at the moment. That's obviously beneficial. But I've always wondered, especially like I understand when you're at a pub or a bar or something, maybe a guest tap there might just be who that pub or brewery or bar has a connection with. But as a craft brewery, what's the process? What do you go through to curate your guest taps?
I guess just trying to keep the tap list varied for sure. And then, I mean, we started off trying to do a lot of more local like breweries with like Block 3, of course, Alora, people around us, just kind of keep it local. Then kind of now that times move on, we've kind of expanded a little bit. And I think for me, a lot of it is just reaching out and seeing who comes to this area and who makes good beer and who can I mean, again, selfishly, who can I try? Like I want to try something cool and maybe it'll sell, maybe it won't. Like I ordered it was a cherry saison towards the end of the summer and nobody drank it except for me. But I thought it was a great beer and it just didn't work out. So I was like, all right, well, lesson learned.
Fair enough. I guess
you gotta keep, it's kind of like why do breweries brew just IPA or hazy IPA? Like that's what people want. So you gotta kind of mix in kind of a little something different here and there, and then kind of get what people want as well. So
yeah, that's fair. The healthy balance. Well, it might not even be a healthy balance if you have to sway more to the styles that are trending. But heck, I would have drank a cherry saison. That sounds lovely. So kudos to that choice.
Yeah.
But I guess it's everyone we've talked to, sometimes you just have to follow the trend with certain things, even if it's not exactly what you might want. But
yeah, I mean, as long as it's a really well-made hazy IPA, that's fine. It's,
yeah.
I won't turn my nose up at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Sean, where can one find Abe Erb beer? Are you guys in the LCBO, in beer stores?
Currently, we are not. We were in the LCBOs before. I don't think it's on the agenda currently to get back in. I know it's a huge kind of hassle for people. So I'm always surprised when I see a small brewery in the LCBO and I'm like, oh, you guys went to all the trouble to get in here and the one beer you have in there. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I guess it does help for getting your brand out there to areas away from where you are located. I don't think that's anything we are planning on doing anytime soon. I think rather just kind of working with other breweries and or bottle shops and stuff like that and trying to get our expand our brand maybe that way. But otherwise, I think I think they're pretty happy just kind of keeping it fairly local.
Mm-hmm. So like in terms of, can you find your beer at any other, like you said, bottle shops, but any drinking establishments, any bars or anything?
Not the moment. I mean, I'm hoping that's kind of what I want to lean into, like career-wise as well, as kind of the sales side of things with the beer, to try and go out and reach out to restaurants and pubs and other breweries as well, and see if we can kind of get our things out there that way. We're currently, as far as I know, we are not anywhere else other than our breweries, unfortunately. But
no, I think that's we talk about, obviously, for those who don't know, Ontario, our liquor restrictions here are pretty high in comparison to places in Canada or in the United States. So it's putting your beer in the LCBO. It seems to be more of a market play in a lot of ways than actually making the sales.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know like the bigger ones like Great Lakes and stuff, they have 10 beers in the LCBO, and they're making money, I'm sure. But for the most part, you're paying for their own testing, and you have to wait. And I've heard, I had a brewery reach out to me to get into our retail shop and talking about that. And he's like, they made a Bach, and he was like, went to the LCBO, and they said, Bach? Nope. won't even discuss putting it on the shelf. He's like, oh, all right, well,
wow,
never mind then.
Just because it's not an style.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Just the fact that you brought up the example of Bach, like, one, I've never seen a Bach in the never. There's actually only like 2 Bachs in the LCBO, and I think they're like in a German import. And my personal opinion is that they sell because they're like $2.50 or something, and it's 7% alcohol.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, you go into the Doppelbock, and it's 8% and $2.50, and you're like,
done.
Great, sweet deal. Yeah.
Yeah,
but these are pretty good beers, but I mean, that's
definitely
great selling point as well.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the market, right, who you're selling to. And
so Sean, can you tell us a little bit about the past almost 2 years now? Obviously, COVID hit us all in one way or another, but being associated with a small business, a craft brewery, can you tell us a little bit about your last 20 months, 18 months, whatever it is now?
Yeah, that's crazy. It's been that long. It was, an interesting time. At the beginning, it's like, oh, we'll be closed for 2 weeks. And you're like, oh, I can handle 2 weeks vacation. Why not? Right. And then 2 weeks turned into almost 2 years. Well, I guess but open up off and on, I guess. But it was definitely a weird time, as I was lucky enough that my wife could work from home. So we still had income, as I was kind of sitting at home waiting. And then just kind of, like most people, waiting to see what the government was going to say when we could reopen again. We ended up not reopening, kind of just closing down again, or I guess for good. Well, not for good, but it seemed at the time it might have been for good. And then personally, I had a lot going on as well. So I was, my wife somehow in the middle of this managed to purchase our first home together.
Nice.
And then the same week we signed those papers, we found out we were pregnant. So
wow,
it was a busy year and a half there. And then finally coming back to work and being like, excited to get back to work, and then trying to find that balance now with a little one at home to not work too much while wanting to work after missing all that time. So it's been interesting. And then obviously restaurant wise, it was a weird time. We were opening up just for a few hours every day doing takeout, and the retail shop going as well, which thankfully the liquor laws changed a little bit there to help that kind of revenue stream come in. Throwing together a makeshift patio in the summer because we didn't have a patio. Just putting one together because you kind of had to, because you weren't allowed to serve indoors. It was weird, kind of just, again, adapting every kind of curveball that came at us. So it was a weird time. I guess it still is a weird time.
The phoenix of the craft beer industry, sort of gone but rose from the ashes, which is great. And Andy and I never like to hear that, a brewery, shuts down. I think we read an article last year. It's like, oh, it shuts stores for good. And then I heard you back up and running, it's really good.
I was pretty excited. Other than actually working there, I'm pretty emotionally invested in as well, which I before I started working there, we actually got married in that venue in the Waterloo location. Yeah, we we drove around the city looking for venues and did stay one, but my wife was very stressed about not being able to find a place. And we were like, all right, let's go stop and grab a drink. We sat at the bar and had a drink, and she kind of looked around and she's like, why not here? And I was like, you want to get married in a brewery? Awesome, let's do this.
That was a test. She's the girl for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happily ever after.
And then when it was a pretty cool, like they went above and beyond, kind of getting things ready for us and making us make sure we had a good time. And people still come up to this day, a couple of years later, being like, it was the best wedding I've ever been to. And I mean, I'm glad I really had a good time, and it was a cool place. And then I ended up coming by one day, and the boss was just like, "You want to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could use a job, sure." And then kind of jumped on board.
Mm-hmm.
It all works out in the end. You're literally a testament to that.
Yeah. Well, Sean, are you from the KW area?
I'm not. Etobicoke, as where I was born and raised.
Toronto guy.
Until 2016, I guess I moved here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So mostly in Toronto.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, can you tell us a bit about you in terms of, you mentioned it a little bit, but your interest in beer, like, has that always been something that has been particularly important to you? Have you always been a big beer fan? I know you said you don't have too much responsibility towards actually making the beer now, right. But is that something you're interested in as well?
For sure. I mean, I don't know if I'll get to the point where I actually brew. I'd love to homebrew at some point. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, working in restaurants, just wasn't really into anything. I drank beer, but nothing in particular, just whatever they had, until restaurant I worked at started bringing a couple little crafts like bows and some of the scope of stuff. And I started trying those, and I was like, oh, these are, different than the usuals that you're finding at the bars. And it kind of slowly grew from there. And then I guess as things kind of blew up in the province as well, so you were just seeing it more and more other places. And then eventually kind of took more of an interest in I guess just visiting breweries and seeing the different style, kind of expanding the style horizon, I guess. And then eventually discovering the Prud'homme classes. I did the first one in person. Level 2 I did actually during COVID virtually. So level 3 is next. I'm not sure when I'll be doing that, but hopefully soon. It was cool working alongside, again, working in a couple of breweries and being able to come in and talk to the brewers. My highlight of my day was I was coming in and being like, what are you guys doing today? Mm-hmm. What's coming up? Trying new beers right from the tank and seeing what they was, or like, whatever gossip they may have had from other breweries, what other people were doing. And it's got really nice to work around with some really, really cool people who are really, really knowledgeable, and kind of it's just fun coming in, just talking and learning and tasting, of course, as well. But so now it's definitely a big part of my life, for sure.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, I know. We haven't talked too much about the Prud'homme course. Garrett, you are a Prud'homme level 1, I think.
Level 1 so far, yes.
Yeah. And
eventually we'll get to that level 2. I really enjoyed level 1. It was super fun. Like, what did you think of level 2? Actually, since you understand,
it's a lot more intense in the tastings. It was kind of interesting because it was virtually. So Roger, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 of us in the class, and Roger, whose program it is, would kind of send you an email and be like, all right, these are the beers you want to try this week. And I was like, all right, an excuse to run to the LCBO, perfect. And a really broad range of styles, and just trying to really sit down and match with food and really, rather than just kind of like the I guess the basic layer of tasting, and trying to get more in depth and growing your palate and get into the aromas and all sorts of things that you wouldn't have thought of before. I mean, it makes you look at like wine tasting a little differently now. When I used to do it for work or whatever, I'm like, oh, what BS this is. It's such. And then you're like, oh no, I'm doing the exact same thing now. Yeah,
for sure.
Now it makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. When just doing the first course, and it sort of expands your mind on beer, and that's kind of what we do here at Rolling Hops as well. Just kind of increase that perspective a little bit, and to your point, it's like, oh, you got to go trying these beers and sort of understand them a little bit more. And I always tout it as the rigorous research that I have to do on behalf of our company, which is, very troublesome for me. But it's interesting when you actually sort of enhance your powers of observation a little bit, take your time to go through each step. Like when you're just drinking beer, sure, you're just drinking beer, but you can dissect it down to a science, and you don't need a course necessarily. It is something you can just do on your own. Obviously the courses definitely help. But I guess maybe what I'm getting at is that anyone can just sit down, stare at their beer, and really dissect it a little bit to get that same experience, which is really what we try and promote. So
absolutely. And I found I was doing the level 1 with a group of people. It was interesting because you could actually bounce kind of like, oh, there's something I'm tasting, and someone's like, oh, it's melon. You're like, yes, that's exactly what I'm tasting. It's cool. Like you're like, there's things you're tasting, but you're not really sure exactly what it is or where it's coming from. And then to bounce ideas off people, which is what level 2 for me was a little more difficult because there was no classroom. So just kind of, I'm like turning to my wife, I'm like, what does this smell like to you? And she's like, I don't know, beer. And I'm like, well, all right. I'll try a little harder, I guess. And then, but which also forced me to kind of really, really get in there and force myself to dig deep and then look a little harder and try and just decipher those aromas and flavors and things like that. So again, like you said, you can do it by yourself at home and just kind of take your time and.
Absolutely. Yeah. The amount of times I've asked my wife to smell a beer, like, what does it smell like? The eye rolls that come. Yeah. After about 4 or 5.
I guess.
It smells like beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we haven't talked about this too much on the podcast, but just how beautiful the craft beer culture is, because it is such a seamless juxtaposition of art and science, because obviously the creation of beer is pure science at the end of the day, but the culture that sort of weaves itself into the beer, like the Prud'homme course, it's very experience oriented. Obviously things like the craft brewery itself, the interior, your branding, just all the marketing that goes into this small business. It's really quite unique.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of aspects to it that you can take into consideration, I guess. Yeah, like the atmosphere at a craft in the pub, like you said, or a tap room or whatever it may be, the glassware, and like the marketing, the name, even the names of the beer, just to draw people in and stuff like that. So there's so many different, I guess, aspects from that point of view. Other than just, I mean, there are certain breweries where, I mean, I was just talking to someone from Woodhouse, and it's just like Woodhouse IPA, lager, stout. I'm like, all right, that's simple, right to the point. That's what they're going for. Whereas some people are Flying Monkeys or whoever with these crazy labels and crazy names and that.
The mutants are revolting. IPA, I think. They have some really interesting, cool names.
It's funny. It seems like there's different kind of perspectives on making the beer, right? So, or more marketing than making, but yeah.
I guess it's fair to say, Sean, that Abe Erb is a little bit, I mean, right now for sure, getting back into the swing of things, you are more focused on the brewery itself as the center point of your product. So obviously you mentioned, while you're not in the LCBO now, or potentially you will be down the road, but for you guys, it's fair to say that your product, your whole entity, it's at your brick and mortar.
Yeah. Like in our location with the neighborhood. I mean, we're planning on doing more, I guess, and I think it's a good idea, since like you said, Phoenix rising up to kind of make the most of our second chance to kind of do some more things within the community that we are in. I know there's a lot of that going on now with the beer industry, with certain I guess issues that have come up. So there's different, like there's the Black is Beautiful and the Brave Noise and all sorts of things that are going on that I think are hopefully bringing people together, and it'd be good for us to be a part of that, to kind of help out like your community a little more. Like I said, to make the most of our second chance to try and do things right. So I'm hoping that we're going to get some things rolling like that in the near future. So yeah, I think community oriented, I think, is kind of and then and then style wise. So right now, just kind of clean, simple, classic styles. We're never going to brew any beers with Fruit Loops or cookie dough or anything like that. I think the craziest we ever got was, which people love to this day, is we did an Earl Grey pale ale in the past, and people are still asking for it. So I'm hoping like this, that's probably as crazy as we ever got. But I think keep doing classic styles well, I think is kind of our thing there, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll move into that a little bit more. You kind of answered the question, but obviously there are, in the province of Ontario, over 300 breweries across the province. There's a lot of variety in terms of beer styles that are created and sold at these breweries. Could I ask you what you think is the most unique factor or the unique quality that Abe Erb has in comparison to the variety and the abundance of other breweries in the province or in the country?
That's tricky because I mean, I don't know if beer wise, I mean, I think we make really well. I don't know if that necessarily differentiates you from, I mean, I guess it could from a few people out there. But I think just kind of, again, like keeping things local. We're not trying to be fancy. We're not trying to go with the trends. We're just trying to do like, I think there's a lot, like almost like your local pub. Like there's a lot of people that come in and they come in all the time and they want the Kolsch and that's all they drink. And I think it's good to be part of that kind of regular crowd that we kind of have built in. People that have come in there since the beginning. And I think I don't know if that's necessarily makes you stand out necessarily, but I think we're not trying to do, not trying to do too much, I guess. And there's, I don't know. That's for me, that's a tricky question to
simple, wholesome, and community focused. Like that's really what will do it. Like from our experience talking to a lot of different brewers and other individuals associated with craft beer, like that, sometimes that's all you need to do. As long as you do that well and you keep it going, foster your local community, obviously depending on how lofty your ambitions are as a brewery. But everything we've ever learned in craft beer today is about community. And if you keep that community happy, they'll keep coming back, which is nice. I think we were speaking with someone from Collingwood. Oh man, it's going to bother me that I forget his name. But he mentioned that if you brew something that's good and great and people love it and you open up their minds to it, they're going to come back and buy a whole bunch of it. And he was the example was just brewing a light lager and opening up someone's mind to the craft. It's maybe new to craft beer, and they came back and loved it and bought 48 that next day, right? Yeah. So and just a local, we're just just sort of opening up that horizon for them, which is fantastic. So hey, if it's simple and effective, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I mean, it helps that we are like, I guess, a brew pub with a restaurant, full on restaurant as well. So I think making sure you have good food to go along with the good beer, and I'm hoping again, like trying to force my way in there to do things like, again, like the food pairings with beer and try to get that people into those sort of things as well, which I think is always, those kind of things are always fun as well to again, to open up people's minds to different styles of beer who may not necessarily try a dark beer with a certain dish. So they only drink a lager and like, well, this would pair well with this, and like, okay, maybe we'll try that. And the next thing you know, they like stouts or whatever. So
yeah, it's, you said you have do you have kitchens? Do you provide food at all 3 breweries or just the Waterloo?
Yes, all 3. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a particular style of food? Is it like, what is the atmosphere that you're kind of going for? Is it more of a brew pub style, or is it a little bit more of an upscale feel? What could you tell us?
Brew pub for sure. I would say, I think the menu I would probably describe as kind of like elevated pub food. It's been a little bit of work and probably kind of a little bit of changes going on here and there, but just trying to refine things. Like some really good takes on the classic burger, some smoked meats, those sort of things. So like, I think just a little twist here and there on kind of your classic pub food. I mean, the Waterloo location got rid of their deep fryer, so it's been a challenge to try and work around. Like, it's weird not having a deep fryer, and that's kind of a staple everywhere you go. But I think it kind of makes you be a little more creative and with the menu and try some new things. So I think it's been good. I mean, I've really enjoyed the food so far, and people seem to really dig it as well. I think it goes kind of like, and you want to have good, if you're gonna have good beer, you gotta have good food to go along with it. So I think that definitely helps.
Yeah. Cozy food, right? Something that's
exactly.
nice to go along with a beer.
Mm-hmm. Sean, can you tell us a little bit? Can you tell us about something inside of the industry of craft beer that perhaps you didn't know about before going into it? Something that maybe folks wouldn't perceive as a factor associated with the craft beer market. Maybe just sort of I'm tweaking your brain a little bit to tell us just any like hidden secrets inside of the industry that folks might not be aware of.
I don't know. I think, like you mentioned before, that I mean, it could be considered an art, but I think science is definitely, having taken the courses and seeing the guys, measuring the weighing out hops and measuring the alcohol and all these sorts of things. It's very, because when I started reading about it, I'm like, there's no way I could do this. This is too much science for me. Like, you just think it's chuck some stuff in a kettle and boil it up and off you go. But there's so many, especially for, I know like a lot of these days it's very, I guess, computerized, but you can see that not all of it is, and it's very, very intricate. One little thing is off and the whole batch is, spoiled. And it's pretty amazing how, I guess, specific and scientific it is to actually brew beer. Having, you kind of like maybe see it in the background when you're at a brewery or whatever, but to actually get in there and see how much time and work they're putting into making a batch of beer is pretty neat to me.
Do you have one head brewer for all three locations?
Currently, I guess technically we don't have one at the moment. Mm-hmm. Everybody kind of, once the closures happened, everybody kind of splintered off. I know one guy ended up working at Mill Street. I don't know where the other guy ended up. A couple like our assistant brewers. One is at Block 3 actually, and one went to Royal City out in Guelph. So I guess will be, once we're up and running, is I guess an open position. If you know anybody.
Garrett.
Yeah.
There you go.
I can be quality control. I can tout myself as a very well experienced quality control analyst.
That's right.
That's what I feel like. I like to taste. And maybe some ideas on what I'd like someone to brew. But
right, you did mention that, Sean. You're brewing out of different establishments currently. So
yeah,
that was a dumb question that I asked you.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah. So are you guys has it been a sort of a full steam ahead in terms of getting things going back again, or has it been sort of a bit more of a slow paced endeavor?
I think especially once we were allowed to open, once the patios got going, and then especially indoors, it was pretty much full steam ahead, like getting fully staffed and getting full menus and full to get the taps all full up and get going. So I think the only thing that's been delaying us, again, brewing ourselves, is the red tape with trying to get all this thing finalized with the government. So
sure,
I think once that's up and running, I think we'll be finding someone to brew and doing that, I think, full time. So I'll be excited to get some little small batches going again.
Mm-hmm. Kitchener Waterloo, obviously we mentioned, has a pretty strong traditional populace who are perceived as being sort of well versed in beer. Would you say that that at the brewery, your clientele in the Twin Cities like Kitchener, Waterloo, do you find that you still are in an educational seat? Like, people come in and say, "Oh, I don't really know what to order in terms of beer. I don't know what a Kolsch style is." Or do you find that your customers, your clientele, they're more well versed, they're hip to the scene, if I can put it in such
more and more
terms?
Since I've been working there, I think more like over the last few years, like maybe 3 years, I think more and more now they come in already pre-educated to various styles. I mean, you're still gonna get someone coming in once in a while and be like, I don't know, I like to drink. I usually drink Bud. Whatever you say. And I'm like, all right, well, Kolsch is, or I think the most common one is Stella. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go Kolsch. It's not a Stella, but it's kind of in the same vein. I kind of describe what that is. But for the most part, I think most people are like, oh, you have a Kolsch, or like what style of IPA is the one you have on tap, and that sort of thing. So I think they're pretty, for the most part, pretty well educated, I think, in that sense, which is fun. And then when they don't know, for me, I love talking about it. So I'm pretty excited to jump in and answer any questions they might have, and make suggestions. And that's what I think, things like pour me a flight of whatever you want. I'm like, oh yes, all right, let's do this. Then we can bring over a flight, and I can get into it and talk about each beer that's in there, and hopefully, hopefully they like it. But it's always, it's a bit of a learning experience for everybody. So that's fun as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see you getting, a little bit of both. I feel like, craft beer in this day and age now is like, it's a well-known phenomenon, I guess, maybe among alcohol drinkers. Like, back in the day, it'd be like, oh, what's that? What do you drink? What's an IPA? But now, people understand that that's it's a very popular style of beer. But it's good to know that, you got some people who are already educated coming in. But I think that's sort of maybe the fun about it. Like, we do that on our events. Is I think we definitely enjoy talking about beer. Obviously, we're here today doing a podcast about it. But like, is that something that you enjoy? Is there something that maybe you've refined over the years of doing it? Actually giving that information to your clientele.
Yeah, I think yeah, just I guess in practice, and I mean taking classes and just getting practice serving, working with people, talking to people about different styles. You kind of, I guess sometimes your first instinct could be, you drink Bud Light, like what that's terrible. Why would you do that? But you don't want to kind of, it's kind of be like, all right, that's, fair enough. Like my father-in-law drinks Bud Light. I don't turn it down when I go to his house, but
here's a beer at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he'd be like, oh, like I have something in that exact same style. Like that's, again, yeah, beer's beer. So I'm not gonna, just try it. It's just, I guess, learning how to, it's more just practicing over time. Just not turning your nose up at anybody. I guess at the end of the day, you want to make it pretty as inclusive as you possibly can. You don't want to, sure, anybody feel intimidated. You don't want to, if they seem educated, then you can kind of go into a lot more detail, I guess. Whereas if someone is not, you just kind of keep it simple, and so they're not, don't want them to seem intimidated by all the jargon or anything like that. So
absolutely, judge how intricate you can get with it. That's a very good point. And this sort of just came to mind, like obviously, among my friends and Andy's friends, like they know where, we run craft beer company for the most part. So some time again, they're not big craft beer drinkers, but I had an example where I had a friend, he's like, I'm going to the beer store, like, what will you drink? And I was like, just anything you buy, man. Like, beer is still beer at the end of the day. But yeah, making it approachable is something we definitely strive for. It's a funny example.
Will you drink, you narcissist?
Basically, it's like, it's, this style or bust. No, it's whatever you're buying, man. If it's beer, if it's water, whatever, I'll drink it.
Yeah, I love going down to the import aisle and just buying some cheap European lagers, and I think, and they're cheap, which is the selling point, but they're always, for the most part, really good beer. And so, when your wallet's a little tight, you kind of cruise down that aisle, and I'm like, yeah, it's still good beer.
Absolutely. Hey, it made it across the sea. It's got to be good beer. Right.
That's right. Yeah, I think craft beer a little bit. I'm thinking of a term. I don't want to say identity crisis. It's not that extreme, but it's sort of, if you think of beer back in the latter half of the 20th century, again, sort of a blue collar beverage, not very sophisticated in terms of its North American image. Well, I'll stick to that, not worrying about what the Europeans were doing. But now into the 21st century, the craft beer scene, it really does. Again, I don't want to say identity crisis. I don't think that's correct, but we're sort of balancing it out, like how how snobby we want to get with beer, because I think what we're all saying here is, I think we're all in agreement that we shouldn't make it a something that's exclusive.
Yeah, for sure. Like again, like kind of we want to lead into that kind of that how I would view the wine kind of scene, where it seems it's upper class, and that's kind of like the kind of snobbiness to it, which you don't want to get into. I don't think, because I mean, beer has traditionally been, like you said, blue collar beverage. So I get why things can cost a little bit more, but I think there's a price point, and there's also kind of the attitude that could come along with that. Whereas, it's, oh, well, this is, bourbon barrel age, this and that. And it's, you're like, okay, well, it's great, but I just want a beer. It's,
Don't want a whole novel.
Yeah.
Just give me a beer.
It is, but it does come in me lots of times when I read the descriptions on, like it's whoever, it doesn't matter which breweries, but their Instagram page or whatever, and here's a new release, and it's just like literally a novel of what this beer is. I'm like, okay, nobody wants to read that. It's just tell me what it is and keep it brief.
And give it one line.
Yeah, it gets to be like that kind of pretentiousness to it. I'm like, it's at the end of the day, it's still beer. So
yeah.
Sean, it leaves out like this. Sorry, Andy, but it leaves out the subjectivity of it all. Like, okay, this is the beer. This is what it went through. This is what it looks like. This is what it tastes like. This is what it smells like, which is fine. And obviously, they went through a lot of work to curate that, which is, what breweries do. But at the same time, it leaves out that subjectivity of like someone, hey, this is what it is. Try it. What do you guys think? And let someone, smell it, taste it. What do they get out of it? And maybe to that effect, it leaves a little bit of that out, which is, the fun in drinking craft beer.
For sure. I mean, you could always, have it kind of the whole process written down on the label or on the website or whatever, but to just kind of, here's our beer and here's the novel about the story behind the beer is kind of maybe not, very approachable, I think. But if you want to get more in depth, maybe get more in depth with, stop by the brew pub and ask about this beer, and they can tell you the whole story. But
for sure.
Yeah. Who would you say, Sean, is not your typical customer but where, like, would you say that it's mostly locals to the Kitchener and Waterloo area, or do you get some? I know obviously if you're in Ontario, Kitchener and Waterloo they're both big student towns, both having universities. Is it, do you have a typical customer, or is it a sort of a wide range?
I think there's a pretty wide range, but for the most part, it's local people who work in the offices or living nearby. I think on the weekends, you get more of the university crowd going out. They're probably starting with us and then moving on to whatever the kids do these days after 10 p.m. But yeah, there's a lot of, I think, I'll say probably 25 to 50-year-olds that come in and have a couple of drinks and dinner and live in the area. I mean, every once in a while you kind of get a little out of towners, but for the most part, I think it's pretty localized in terms of clientele. Yeah,
it's interesting because, for those who don't know, Kitchener and Waterloo, you just have such a massive amount of breweries to choose from. And not only in those two cities, but just around, like you mentioned, Block 3, that's in St. Jacobs, and just other like little breweries just sort of all over the area. Is it hard to sort of differentiate yourselves from just even in your local community of Garrett and I, we talk to craft brewery owners and managers of craft breweries and brewers themselves, and there really is something unique in terms of the lack of competition. Like there's not really there doesn't seem to be anyways too much of a cutthroat mentality of aggressive competition between breweries. But at the end of the day, you are a small business, and if you don't get customers through the door, you can't stay in business. So how do you manage to distinguish yourself? I know I asked earlier what makes you unique in terms of all the other breweries in Canada, which is a big kind of hyperbolic question, but how do you, I guess I'm giving you a smaller version of how do you, or do you even spend any time thinking about differentiating yourself from the other breweries in the area, or just marketing yourselves a little bit different?
I think, again, the full kitchen, like full-time kind of brew pub aspect, I think helps us, because I think there's, other than maybe Aurora, nobody really has full like food menu. But I think just kind of I think just the way we've based ourselves in the community, we set ourselves right down in Uptown Waterloo and then downtown Kitchener, and then kind of made ourselves kind of like the local like watering hole kind of feel to us, and just kind of trying to do. I mean, you make the good beer, but you gotta treat the people right as well to keep them coming back, I think. And I think we've done a good job of that, because people, when we reopened, people were so excited. They're, I'm going to tell everybody you're back. You know, it was pretty cool to see that reaction. You can never know. And then people were so excited that we were back. And I think that to me, that was, we had done a good job of treating people right when we came, and they've been coming back. So I think that's one thing for sure that has helped us, because there's a lot of great breweries around, and so I think, and again, I think it's really nice that people come in like, oh, I'm doing a little brewery tour, and like, for themselves, and they're like, where should I go? And I have no problem being, oh, how much time do you have? Like, I can tell you where to go for sure. So and so makes great beer, so you have to check them out after you finish here, of course. But I think it's good. I think it's great that breweries are like that. That there's no, that's not really cutthroat, like you said. It's more very, very more of a community than kind of rivals,
helping each other out. We've heard that over and over again, a number of different examples among a lot of different craft breweries that we work with.
The amount of collaborations breweries do with each other, and kind of that kind of thing, especially that, again, like now with different kind of charitable and community initiatives going on, and everybody's kind of jumping on board and helping other breweries and communities and charities is really kind of cool to see as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're coming up on our hour here, Sean, but I did want to ask you, obviously that, things are getting going now. What's maybe one thing that you're looking forward to start working on with Abe Erb in the near or long term?
I think just for myself personally is just continuing to, I guess, discover for myself, and then exposing it to other people, new breweries and new beers, and bringing them into our shop, and then getting to try them myself and be able to talk to people about them and expose them to new other breweries from across the province. Hopefully again soon we'll be able to brew in-house, and I'd love, get pitch some ideas, and again, walk in every morning and smell the boil going, and get some new beers going on tap that we make. And I think that for me, I'll be so excited once we're up and brewing again and in-house. And I think that for me, that's probably the most exciting thing. And then just expanding, trying to push our brand out there and get some, not necessarily grow, like we're not going to expand, but just kind of let more people know that we're around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
back
Sean.
to business.
Yeah, we're back, rising like a phoenix. I'll add a bit more to your question, Garrett, because I ask this question a lot, but not only Abe Erb itself, but in terms of craft beer, obviously pre-pandemic, the increase of craft breweries across the province and the country and the world, it was just enormous. Craft breweries were just popping up everywhere. Do you see this? And maybe you could just talk about the Kitchener Waterloo area or Southern Ontario. You can answer whatever you want. Yeah. Do you see this growth sort of as it's stagnated a bit in the past 20 months, but do you think as we continue into a post-COVID world, do you see that growth coming back? Do you see a stagnation continuing? Do you see maybe a decrease in supply, a decrease in craft breweries, perhaps some deciding to close their doors?
I mean, if I had to guess, I feel like the growth will kind of, maybe not as extreme as it was before, but I think it'll keep growing. I think, I don't know where peak beer is, where it just kind of reaches that point where it's just too much. But I think they'll keep popping up, and maybe be more, I guess, like localized, where it's just, this is the craft. They're not won't be in the LCBOs or anything. It'll just be a brewery for that particular town almost, because they're pop up in these small little towns, and will serve the population, and maybe people kind of passing through, and that's all we'll focus on, is rather than kind of trying to be this giant brewery that reaches all over the province. They just kind of focus on their little area, and I think that's kind of where I see it going. Not like, I mean, there's obviously they're gonna have the big breweries that are around, that they're already there, Great Lakes and Flying Monkeys and whoever else, but I think it'll be a lot more kind of centralized, or localized rather, breweries kind of focusing on their community, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, Sean Duke, I guess that's a good place to stop. Thank you very much for joining the Beer Bound podcast. We appreciate you taking the time. If you're in the Kitchener Waterloo area, Abe Erb, you got to check them out. Rising like a phoenix, as we've said. Sean, we hope to chat with you again potentially next year if you'll
that sounds great.
join
Thanks.
us again.
I appreciate having me on. That was awesome. Love chatting beer.
Thanks so much, Sean. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all our interviews and beer-related content. Remember, craft beer is here.